G'day and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to show you 7 beginner trunk strength exercises that you need to be able to master to feel like your trunk is functioning normally. Each one of these exercises goes after one specific motion or anti-motion that your trunk should be able to tolerate that you may come across in your day-to-day life. And for me clinically as a physiotherapist, the key to a healthy functioning spine is not only being strong through all the different ranges that your trunk has to offer, but also being mobile and making sure that when you are stationary and not using your spine, you're still putting it into an ideal posture. Because although it's hard to link poor posture with pain, it's very easy clinically to link poor posture with poor function. And it's a lot easier to link poor function to pain once you start to know what to look for. So with that being said, test out each one of these 7 exercises and let me know in the comments down below which one you feel you need to work the most at. And if you're happy to work through these for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'd love for you to come back and let me know how you feel it's going. So the first and potentially the most important beginner trunk strength exercise that you need to master is developing an awareness and a control of your trunk's bracing mechanism. This technique that we're about to go through is really important because not only can you do it lying down on your back like we're about to in this video, but once you feel you've got a sense of how to do this correctly, it's really important that you take this exact concept and place it into anything and everything that you do throughout your life. Whether you're lifting, doing exercise, sitting down, doing nothing, the more that you can filter this technique into your day-to-day life, the better your spine will function, the more robust it will become, and the less likely it will be to become injured and dysfunctional long term. So all we want to do in this instance is we want you to lie down and feel comfortable. You can do this on the floor, you can do this on your bed, whatever you feel comfortable doing. We want to locate the bumps at the front of your hip. If you can roll in towards the fleshy part, towards your belly button, and dig your fingers into this area, this is where you'll feel your core muscles activate or your trunk muscles bracing properly if you're doing it correctly. In the beginner stages, it's really valuable to get some sensory feedback as to how this is actually working. So digging into those areas, what we want to get you to do is just to take a comfortable breath in. And then as you breathe out, imagine that you're drawing your belly button in and up towards your spine. And what you should notice is where you have your fingers, when you draw that belly in and up, you should feel like it gently hardens underneath those fingers. Now, this is a completely different scenario to if you're about to do a sit-up and you were squeezing those abs. That's a broader, more superficial activation. We don't want that overall squeezing and tensing because it's not sustainable. We want to go looking for that gentle hardening up underneath those fingers. And if you're doing this correctly, you should be able to maintain that and continue to breathe. Now, if you do start to breathe and you feel like it peters out or it softens, then stop, come back to normal again, dig your fingers back in, breath in, breathe out again, draw that belly in, try and maintain that feeling, and then breathe comfortably over the top without losing it. Now, if you feel like that alone is quite difficult, then stay at this phase, practice it 10, 15, 20 times until you feel like you can start to engage that muscle and breathe comfortably over the top. Once you feel you can engage that muscle and do something else at the same time, then we want to start to make that ability harder and challenge your ability to maintain that activation. So if you've mastered the breathing and you've got that belly drawn in, then once you've drawn that belly in, try and maintain that and gently lift one heel off the ground and put it down again. Keeping your belly engaged, then alternate to the other leg and keep alternating from side to side, making sure that nothing changes at your trunk. And if you can master that specific stage, then that's the best time to start incorporating that into everything else you do throughout the day. Start with walking, start with sitting and standing, and then as you feel your confidence improves, so will the function of your spine. So the second beginner exercise that I think everybody must be able to do to improve their trunk muscle strength is the Jefferson Curl. So the Jefferson Curl is essentially segmentally bending through each level of your spine, going down as deep as you feel you can, before reversing that and stacking everything back up and coming back up into extension. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Generally, we tend to promote that bending your back is bad, but bending your back is a normal part of spinal function. The difference lies in the day-to-day shapes and positions that we get into, where if we take you through a global bend where each segment is bending through as low as you feel comfortable and then coming back up again at the same time, we're loading up your spine in a very respectful and safe way, provided that you're not exceeding the amount of load that it can currently tolerate. That is different to if you spend a bunch of your time sitting down, slouched into a bad position, isolating 1 or 2 segments of your spine for hours on end. If you do find that a flexion-based movement acutely irritates your back or annoys your symptoms, then it's more likely that that movement just exposed something that you took into that movement as opposed to the movement being inherently a problem on its own. So what's really important about a Jefferson curl is that you want to get your body used to segmentally bending in a respectful way as far as you feel comfortable, doing your sets of 10, sets of 15, segmentally focusing on each part of your back, bending, rolling yourself down as low as you can go, and then coming back up again as high as you can come, to reinforce your body's ability to flex normally. It doesn't matter how low you go, it just matters that you go as low as you feel comfortable and then reverse that in a respectful, safe way. If it becomes too easy for you and you're at the full depth that you currently have, then you are most welcome to grab a weight and repeat that same process. Again, it is inherently normal to load your spine and to load your trunk musculature in a way that asks it to respectfully get stronger. The big difference is if we're just leaving your back in a bad position for hours on end, our body will adapt to that shape as it will this, but it will do so in a dysfunctional way by becoming stiffer, tighter, more restricted, and potentially one step closer to being irritated and annoyed. So out of all the exercises that we're going through in this video, apart from the core activation that we just touched on, the Jefferson curl is probably priority number 1, if not number 2, just to get your spine used to bending normally again. If you are someone who's had a history of disc issues and other specifically dysfunctional parts of your spine, the Jefferson curl should still be a very valuable tool for you to progress towards, but obviously speak to someone who knows your spine specifically to figure out when the appropriate time to practice that might be. So the third exercise we want to touch on here is your classic plank position. So for me as a physiotherapist, the plank is such a simple exercise to cultivate good trunk strength and optimize trunk mechanics. I value the ability to maintain a good posture when you're doing the things that you need to do. And when you do a plank, you're essentially just practicing good posture, but horizontally with gravity acting more specifically on your trunk musculature. So as you may know, getting down into a plank position is very simple. You can start by being on your knees if you feel like on your toes is a little bit too tricky, but the idea of the exercise is the same. We don't want you to clasp your hands together. That does make this a little bit too easy. We want to make sure that your hands are apart to ask the musculature in your shoulders to work that little bit harder than what it would if you had your hands together. Now, the key with any good core strength exercise is you want to make sure that you are in a straight line. You don't want to drop your hips or poke your bottom up. From your head to your toes, or in this instance, from your head to your knees, you want to make sure that you feel you're stretching yourself out. So the same thing applies if you're in the classic plank position. You want to feel like you're stretching yourself out, squeeze your butt cheeks, draw your belly in like we've already gone through, and essentially this becomes a mental game more than anything. For most people, you should be able to get at least 30 seconds, if not 60 seconds, before you feel like you want to start to sag or you want to start to change that position entirely. But working on your plank is a great way to work on your general core muscle strength and is something that I would urge everyone to practice as much as they can. And it's also worth noting, as a beginner trunk exercise, if being horizontal across gravity does feel too hard for you, do this up on a bench where you have your feet on the ground, have your arms up on a bench, and then as you feel your tolerance improves, work your way down to a chair height, work your way down to a block, until you feel you can eventually get down to the ground. But if you want your trunk to function as optimally as possible, whether it's athletically or just during your activities of daily living, then make sure you give your plank a try. Take a sense of what number you start with today, and then 2 or 3 weeks, come back to it again and see if that number has dramatically improved. So the fourth beginner trunk strength exercise that I think everybody needs to master is the side plank. Now again, everything that I just said about the plank obviously applies to the side plank as well, but putting you on your side just changes the orientation and the demands of the exercise to not just work the front and the back of your trunk, but to engage the musculature at the sides of your trunk as well. Much like the plank, your ability to maintain a strong neutral spine, irrespective of what demands in terms of load is placed on your spine during your activities of daily living, being able to maintain a straight spine and not sag left or right can be really valuable for a whole range of things. So much like the plank, if you do feel like being on the ground on your side is a little bit too taxing, start by doing this with your arm up on a bench or a table and gently work your way down until you feel you can get to this horizontal position. But how it essentially looks is you want to have one elbow on the ground. Again, you can start on your knees if you need to, but if you find that that's a bit too easy, we can start with your feet out. You can have one foot in front of the other together if you want to. I prefer to have my feet on top of each other, but much like a regular plank, from your head to your toes, you want to imagine that you're stretching yourself out as far as you feel comfortable. Squeeze your bottom again to put your pelvis in a good position. If you've mastered the ability to draw your belly in, have that engaged at the same time. Same thing with a plank, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes. It doesn't matter how long you do this for. We just want to make sure that you can experience some fatigue at some stage. So the next exercise we want to touch on here is called the Pallof Press. And what's significant about the Pallof Press is it's not an exercise where you're going to be twisting and moving in any great direction, but it's an anti-rotation stretch. It's a motion that our spine absolutely needs to be proficient in resisting just to function normally. And much like the plank and the side plank, we're not actually going to be moving our trunk to try and train your muscles to maintain a strong, stable spine throughout. And all you need for this exercise is a resistance band, whether it be a TheraBand or a TheraTube. You can use cables, you can do anything that gives you some resistance. We want to make sure that you keep your trunk nice and still. So we're going to activate those core muscles, create that bracing mechanism that we've already touched on. We want to step out with as much tension as you feel comfortable. I like to get my patients to have a little bit of a mini squat just to increase the demands of this exercise. The further out your arms go, the harder it's going to be. So what we want you to do, for me, I can keep my trunk still and push straight out in front with the band constantly trying to pull me back in this direction. And when doing this exercise, you will feel a lot of muscles at the sides of your trunk start to kick in, potentially in ways that you may not have noticed before. But the Pallof Press is a fantastic and simple way to just attack your beginner trunk muscle exercises from a slightly different perspective than the other exercises. So exercise number 6 is kind of a sister exercise to the Jefferson Curl, and that is a lateral flexion exercise. Similar to the side plank and the Pallof Press, we want to make sure that the musculature on the side of your trunk gets as much love and TLC as it does the front and the back. And much like the Jefferson Curl, we want to make sure that you start in a really nice up tall posture, squeeze your glutes to put your pelvis in a good position, draw your belly in over the top, and then imagine that you're segmentally bending through each level of your spine, going as low as you can. Now we want to make sure that you don't inadvertently bend forward or arch backwards to try and get around some restrictions you may have in your back. But the idea with the exercise is if you can create that pure lateral flexion, you'll get down to a point where you'll feel you've gone far enough. And then if you just respectfully come back up again to the middle and then lower yourself down again, very quickly you'll start to feel you can get lower and lower in the exercise the more you do it. Make sure that you do your 10 or 15 reps, chasing that fatigue, making sure that you even it up on both sides. And the benefit of an exercise like this one, like the Jefferson Curl, is because we're working on the segmental mobility of those joints as well as the strength, you should feel like your back becomes looser and looser the more you do this exercise, not just stronger and stronger. And so the last beginner trunk strength exercise that I think everybody needs to do is a prone extension. Much like the plank, we want to get you horizontally on a surface, but in this case, we're going to get you to lie down. You can have your hands wherever you feel comfortable, but for me, I prefer to have them just here on my forehead. What we want to do with this is much like the plank and the side plank and everything else we're doing. We want to make sure that your belly is drawn in. We want to make sure that your butt is squeezed, just to put everything in a good orientation so that everything's loaded up correctly. Keeping everything together, we want to get you to lift your head, your shoulders, your chest off the ground as far as you feel comfortable, and then come back down again. Repeatedly come up as high as you feel comfortable, making sure that we're looking for some sort of fatigue of the muscles that run down either side of your spine. These trunk extensors often get a little bit weak when we tend to slouch a fair bit, but starting with your head and arching backwards, we're essentially doing an extended version of the Jefferson Curl, where we're trying to engage a lot of the muscles into an extended base position. The great thing about this exercise is that the more you do this, not only will you find that you'll get stronger at doing this and it'll get easier, but the more you use these segments of your spine, the looser that they may become as well. But much like the rest of these exercises, working on the back extensor strength is a fantastic way to make sure that the back of your trunk develops the necessary strength to function normally. So with that being said, I genuinely hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed this content and you want to see more like this, let me know by leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. But as always, I sincerely hope that was helpful for you, and I'll see you next time.